I mean, I think a brand is very wide sweeping. I think about the brand kind of in every element that it touches, kind of like the person answering the phone in your call center is your brand ambassador. I think about the pros that kind of are part of the platform that go out to the consumer's house. They're part of the brand, kind of they're in the house and they're talking about us and they can be our biggest advocate.
100%.
And so, it's important. Like sometimes we get kind of focused on, okay, what's that digital ad I'm running? What's that TV ad I'm running? And you think about those kind of things, but it's actually every touch point. And I think when you can get every touch point to align, then you end up in a scenario where kind of people feel the brand in every way they interact.
This episode is brought to you by WeWork. Being able to work remotely is a game changer. You don't have to spend time and money commuting, and often you can work from anywhere in the world. But it does have its downsides. It can be pretty lonely working from home, and if you're off traveling, it can be really hard to find somewhere to sit down and work without a sticky table. That's where WeWork comes in. WeWork is co-working space with offices all over the world. Fast Wi-Fi, free tea and coffee, and loads of desk space and meeting rooms, so you always have somewhere to get your work done, whether that's alone or with friends and coworkers. And with WeWork On Demand, you can book co-working space by the day and meeting rooms by the hour at locations all around the world. Thanks to our friends at WeWork, you can get 50% off your next co-working space booking. Head to we.co/Brian50, that's BRYAN50. Download the WeWork app and enter code BRYAN50, that's Brian50, to get 50% off your next booking. Here we go.
Hi, I'm Angie Hicks. I'm co-founder of Angi, which is known also as Angie's List, and I'm on Behind the Brand with Brian Elliott.
Everyone, welcome to another episode of the show. Angie, welcome.
Thank you.
I usually ask my guests, how did you get this job?
How did I get this job? I was graduating from college, and one of the guys that I worked for in an internship came to me and said, "Hey, why don't we start a business? Your parents will hate the idea, and we'll just see where it goes." And I didn't know any better, so I said yes.
I have to admit, I'm a little starstruck right now. Like, I'm a user of Angie's List, or Angi.
Yeah.
I've seen your face. I mean, you're sort of like the quintessential marketer / entrepreneur case study. I think it's brilliant. I love your story. I want to hear it from you, but I have to tell you, I'm a little bit starstruck right now. It's fun.
So kind.
No, it's just like, it's so awesome, really. This come up soon. I can't wait for my audience to hear a 2024 updated version of it.
Yeah.
Maybe some, have heard it, whether it's on NPR or some other places, but what a treat to have you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here.
So unpack, that early story, because you didn't intend to go the direction that you went.
No, not at all. Not at all. I was coming out of college. I was an economics major. I was the mid-90s. At one point, I wanted to be an actuary. So I'm like totally a math geek. And as I was coming out of school, I was like, maybe I'll be a business consultant. In fact, that was kind of where the job opportunity I had was. I was going to go to DC and do consulting. But I had worked in a venture capital firm during an internship in college. And I can't say that I nailed that internship per se, because when I went to the interview, I didn't really know much about venture capital. And I was like, gosh, I really just hope he doesn't ask me all about venture capital, because I just don't know a lot about it. And he looked at me and he was like, "So what is venture capital?" It's like, I'm like, "Well, you invest in small companies." Like, technically true, right? And, our conversation continued. And, we saw that the highlight of my resume at that point was Employee of the Month at Ryan's Steakhouse. And
nice.
And he asked me in my interview if I was as good at math as the guy that he had interviewed just prior to me. And I debated whether I should be honest or, what would be the best path. I opted for honesty. So I was like, no, if that's what you want, Murray's your guy. And I found out later after that interview that he kind of felt sorry for me and thought I needed a break. So I got the internship, And later, Bill became my co-founder of Angi.
I mean, quick lesson right there. Honesty is always the best policy.
It's always the best path forward, right?
Yeah. Because you don't have to remember the lie that you told or the
right.
The truth that you expanded or
Spread,
embellished.
Yep. I was like, I'm a Midwestern gal that, came from a middle-class family. And I was just taught you kind of do what you say what you're going to do. And how I've kind of lived my life.
What do you think he saw in you?
I think he saw kind of opportunity. I think he thought like I was smart and, and that kind of came to play out in the internship. He told me later, he's like, I just keep giving her things and she just kept doing things. So I never thought of myself as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like the big idea person. I'm not charismatic. I'm not a risk taker, quite honestly. I'm like, I like a plan. But I could execute. Like I could take something and, what I realized later in life, it probably took me a long time, that perseverance is probably one of the biggest traits of successful entrepreneurs. And
yes.
That one I was good at.
Yeah. This whole last man, last woman standing.
Yeah.
Outlast.
Right. It's hard. Yeah. A startup is hard. I mean, I was young. I moved to a new city. I didn't know anyone except for my co-founder and his wife. I mean, it was hard. I was just learning new things. I mean, I didn't even know anything about home improvement when I started. I was 22. I'd never, hired a contractor before.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family where we didn't hire a lot of contractors. Like I think my dad would hire an electrician if he needed one or someone to tune up the HVAC. But otherwise, we painted our own house and did that stuff ourselves.
Yeah. Put a timestamp on this. We're talking about the mid-90s?
Mid-90s, yeah.
Okay, so 95, for example.
95, exactly.
I mean, Friends is on TV.
Yeah.
AOL is sending...
Our first email address for the company was an AOL address.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're sending out the CDs. You're getting them in the mail, and you're excited about email.
Exactly. It's all new.
A year or two after that, really, the internet starts to kick in.
Right.
Most companies don't have a website yet.
Right. We did not either.
You're on sort of this analog dial-up, and your websites are loading one frame at a time.
And they were email-based.
Yeah.
So I think it was in 1999, we gave $1,000 to a couple of college kids and had them build our basically marketing email-based website. So the list wasn't on the site yet. And a few months later, we go to our chief operating officer and we're like, hey, how's that website going? And he's like, well, pretty good. About half of our memberships are coming through email right now.
Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, maybe we should probably invest in a website.
Yeah. I mean, but it was so new, right? Like totally new territory. I don't even think really things really started getting kicked in until maybe 98, 99.
Yeah.
It was just all so brand new.
Right. And you think about it, we were publishing a list of content. I mean, we were nervous about how much of the content we should show out to the world, right? Because before people would call in and say, I need a plumber. We give them their plumber. It's like there was this whole process of, how does this complement the business and doesn't, kind of destroy the business?
Right. I mean, this is also a time when the yellow pages are still a thing.
The yellow pages were huge back then. In fact, many of our marketing in the early days was, what if you had the real yellow pages? What if you could see behind their marketing dollars,
right.
Who was good and who wasn't?
Yeah, yeah. Digitize the whole thing.
Right.
That was exciting to think about. Yeah. I sort of had this image when you were explaining, young Angie and coming up. I'm a huge fan of the show Mad Men. Have you ever seen that series? Yep. So I think about like young Peggy Olson, who's like that super smart protege of Don Draper, but like, he's the experienced marketer. Maybe that's your mentor and your partner. And she was very smart, whip smart, could run the business basically without him.
Right.
But like didn't know what she didn't know. And then, eventually left because she could do it on her own. But that's, I just had that quick image. So cool. And so, okay, so you think maybe he saw the fact that you were like this moldable clay, this young person who he could maybe mentor and help shape. And you were an executor even maybe at a young age. Maybe he saw that in you.
Yeah. And so he was still at the venture capital firm for the first several years that we started the business. Yeah. This was just kind of his side thing. So, he'd call me every day and ask me how things were going. I remember, I think it was one time. So I started in like the spring, and then by August or September, it was one of those where I was like, realized like, this is my life.
Yeah.
I'm not going back to school. I don't know anyone. I'm kind of miserable.
Yeah.
I call him. He was smart enough to realize I was like at that point. And he's like, let's meet at the coffee shop versus, the little 100 square foot office that I worked in. And, we went and as soon as we sat down, I just started crying.
Yeah.
And so he just starts talking and he just starts talking.
Because you were over it.
Yeah, I'm just like, I'm done. I'm just like, this is miserable. And he looked at me, at the end, he's like, I feel like you didn't get a chance to say what you wanted to say. And he said that all I said was, I'm not going to quit. And he's like, great, well, let's get back to work then.
So for those who don't know the context around that story, like what were you going through at the time? What did it feel like? I mean, does it feel like you were just banging your head against a wall? Like,
I mean, there was, we were starting from scratch. I mean, we were a marketplace. We had a chicken and the egg problem. We needed consumers to join, to tell us about what contractors they were using. And then we could, go out and sell advertising to the contractors. And I was like starting with nothing. I was like trying to rub two sticks together, trying to get a little bit of a flame.
Yeah.
We didn't have a marketing plan. We thought that door-to-door sales was going to be our path. With introvert me that was afraid to talk to anyone. I was going door-to-door in the mid-90s. No one was really taking to that.
Right.
And it was just like, it was kind of a test of kind of grit.
Yeah. But you had some benchmark, like you had some proof of concept with the local list of the neighboring city, right?
Yes, we did. So there was a business, and that's what we based it off of, was a company Bill had used to renovate a house in Indianapolis. And they had built their business in the 70s going door to door. But then it had grown and kind of evolved. It almost turned into an annuity in the end, where it was like, people just kept renewing and they would refer a friend, etc. So there was no marketing plan for this business. We knew so much about the business, but we didn't have a modern marketing plan.
Yeah.
So then we had to figure out what that was going to look like.
A lot of people who I talk to on this show, and even some of the guests that we've had on, they make that classic mistake. I've made it too. You have this brilliant idea, and then you do all the planning and whatever to take it to market, and then you realize that no one wants it.
Right.
So what advice do you have in this area of like having this great idea, but how do you know whether there's demand or not? Did you look at what the other company is doing and saying, there's enough proof of concept, there's enough evidence here that this could work? Right. That we could springboard off what they're not doing? Like, walk me through that process.
And I think you're right. So I think I used to kind of joke around. I think sometimes entrepreneurs spend too much time planning and not enough time trying. And, luckily we had a business that didn't require a lot of capital to go out and try, right? Like I could go and ask you for the name of your plumber and sell you a membership, and then I've got a plumber and I could start going from there. And we did have a proof of concept with Indianapolis. We knew what that business eventually looked like. And we knew that, Indianapolis, Columbus, Ohio, 50th-ish largest cities in the country. And if it's hard to find a plumber there, it's harder to find one in LA or Chicago.
You extrapolate the...
Yeah, exactly. You start to do the math. You're like, this is interesting.
About what size company do you think they were? Like, what was the gross revenues, do you think?
Indianapolis one, they were probably, I'm trying to think, it might have had a bottom line of like $100,000 a year. I mean, it was a nice lifestyle business. So the woman that was running it, the founders had sold it. And the one that was running it, I mean, she had a couple of part-time employees. She was playing golf all the time, just having a lovely, lovely life.
Well, $100,000 in the 90s, was
like good money.
Almost $500,000 now,
yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And so was it a subscription base as well?
It was.
Okay, so use that model.
Yep.
To say, okay.
So we knew it was like there were both sides of the marketplace were going to pay. The consumer was buying a subscription. The pros who were highly rated could advertise in the newsletter.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it was sort of a newsletter.
It was a newsletter.
Flyer.
I mean, it was a flyer. Like I was writing it. I would go and have it printed probably at the local Kinko's in the early days, and then I was stapling it together and mailing it out.
Yeah. Awesome. It reminds me of like the early Netflix stories I hear about when they were
like we all had a day where we had to mail the DVDs. We had the day where we'd like, so one of our marketing campaigns, we always believed word of mouth was really big for the business. So we used to have a cold hard cash program. We actually used to send cash in the mail. If you referred someone, we'd send you $7 in cash.
Oh, wow.
And then we would sweeten it with a bag of M&Ms.
Okay.
We eventually went to checks because people were like, "Okay, maybe we should do checks." But it was funny. The only thing that was ever stolen out of the packages, it was never the check. It was always the M&Ms.
Yeah.
And we would have a Friday and we'd all go package up the packages of M&Ms and checks.
That is awesome. Wow. Where'd you even keep those? You had like a small little office, like just piled up.
Somebody would run over,
Just imagine.
buy some. I mean, this is the way we worked. You know, it was like we would do small. It was like somebody would go to the store and buy a bunch of M&Ms, and we would come home and we would ship them out.
Yeah. Yeah. The good old days. Wow.
Yeah.
And so where did that get you?
So we opened in Columbus. After a year, we ended up buying Indianapolis. And then we just kind of opened market by market, one a year. But we really believed that local was local, and built it in each city. So we were opening an office, building up a little team because we thought that the people had the local nuggets, right?
Finger
it was
on
like
the pulse.
Exactly. It was like, we need to be able to talk to, people in Cleveland need to talk to someone in Cleveland who knows everything about Cleveland, knows that you're not sending a plumber from the west side to the east side or vice versa.
That's kind of true.
Exactly.
Right?
And so, but what we realized when we wanted to put our website up and when we eventually wanted to put the list on the web, we were like, well, we can't have 6 databases across the country. We had to have one. And all of a sudden it became a technology question to support the website that we ended up trying to consolidate everything into a single call center.
Okay.
Which was bumpy at best at first.
Yeah. I mean, you were the call center in the beginning, right?
I was it. And that's why, we started the business. It was called actually Columbus Neighbors. And after the first year or so, I guess it was, we realized that people thought our newsletter was the list. And so if we didn't happen to highlight the task they were looking for that month, like, oh, maybe next month it'll be useful. They didn't realize they could call in and get real-time information.
Yeah.
So we decided to rename it. And so we debated between Jackie's list, and Jackie was the mother of one of our investors in Columbus, and she knew everyone. Like, if you needed to know something in Columbus, you'd go ask Jackie. It was going to be, another one was The List. We were going to be this militant kind of protect the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And then Bill threw out Angie's list. And he was like, well, she is the one that answers the phone. And, even if she leaves, the story still works. Like, that just kind of works. And so it was one of those kind of decisions when you have about 1,000 members and you're just in one city and it's kind of like hasn't gone anywhere. You're like, oh, that's okay. We could call it that. Who knows what it, and then
Who knows what it could become?
Exactly.
Let's stay on that for a second. So naming convention and branding and all that's really important. This show is called Behind the Brand. We talk a lot about branding and people coming up with, certain names. The List is an awesome name, but it's sort of also nebulous.
Yes.
And generic. It's like,
Right.
United Airlines.
Yeah, it could be anything.
Great name, but it's like too generic.
Right.
How do you think about that now? That you sort of fell into a great decision.
Yeah, we kind of fell into it, but I think you can also argue that, kind of choosing to name it after one person could also be a bad idea.
Yeah.
Because it comes it could become part of their personality. If they don't fit the brand, you kind of got this kind of connection here, right? That you have to kind of think about and divide.
Yeah.
But I'm a believer that people have people have more affinity to other people than they do to brands.
100%. Yeah.
And that has been what, kind of what we've experienced is, it's neat to see how people interact. And I think in our business where we're helping them take care of their home, which is, where they raise their families, there's like this personal connection to this. It's like
the stakes are high.
The stakes are high. I'm like, they're spending a lot of money. You're inviting them into your personal space. And so there's a lot of trust in it. And so how do you build that? It's easier to trust a person than it is to trust a brand.
Yeah. There's this phrase, I have a guy.
Yes.
Right. And
right.
In this case, you're
right.
the guy.
I'm going to be here with you and we're going to kind of take care of this together. And that's how it, and that's how it evolved.
Yeah. Trust is so important in building a brand, right? Mm-hmm. And the fact that you personalized it too, I think, yeah, you're right. It could go either way. There's probably a reason why Richard Branson's name is not on his formerly Airplanes or his music industry stuff. So there's an argument to be made for that. If you're planning to sell the business or you want to have other things happen, but there's also a great amount of trust and other equity built in when you make it personal, right?
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I'm feeling a little bit of this being starstruck, because I, kind of used the service, grew up kind of knowing you, your face,
Right.
And having all the marketing sort of have that baked in. It's surreal a little bit, right, to have you in front of me. What advice can you give other people who are building their brand or thinking about naming conventions? What other wisdom can you impart?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to think about your brand in something that is relatable, that can grow with the business. I mean, don't get it too narrow and niche. You want to make sure it'll evolve. I mean, kind of our rebranding from Angie's List to Angi is an example of that. It was like, hey, we realized we're more than a list.
Right.
We're more than just this kind of static newsletter that we were in 1995. I mean, you can do all of these other things. You can schedule, you can message, you can do all these things to interact with pros. And, the brand needed to evolve to do that. So we opted to, keep the Angi, and keep some of the brand goodness that came from Angie's List and just modernize and make it more.
Yeah. And
relatable.
there's some precedent for that, right? So Domino's Pizza is now Domino's.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's normal. It's like we all get a little shorter. Like, let's get it quicker. And
The Facebook is now
right.
Facebook and now Meta. So there's been an evolution. How many years was it that it was Angie's List, then down, shortened to Angi?
So let's see. So we switched it over to Angi 3 years ago.
Okay.
So 25 years is Angie's List.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're okay.
Or I guess 24 years is Angie's List. 1 year is Columbus Neighbors.
Yeah. 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 And maybe at some point you'll just be a swoosh,
Yeah. We'll just be the A, right?
Yeah. At some point. Yeah. That's smart. So how do you think about brands and branding? How do you define what a brand is?
I mean, I think a brand is very wide sweeping. I think about the brand kind of in every element that it touches, kind of like the person answering the phone in your call center is your brand ambassador. I think about the pros that kind of are part of the platform that go out to the consumer's house. They're part of the brand, kind of they're in the house and they're talking about us and they can be our biggest advocate.
100%.
And so, it's important. Like sometimes we get kind of focused on, okay, what's that digital ad I'm running? What's that TV ad I'm running? And you think about those kind of things, but it's actually every touch point. And I think when you can get every touch point to align, then you end up in a scenario where kind of people feel the brand in every way they interact.
Mm-hmm. So how do you define then Angie's brand?
I think it is, that's a great question. And, we should probably, be asking our chief marketing officer this at this point. But I mean,
wait a second. You used to be that chief.
I'm the chief marketing officer. Yeah. Now I'm like the chief customer officer and spending my time talking to the customer. So yes, I do know a thing or two about marketing.
You've
but
marched in those shoes.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really about being able at Angi is about how do we get jobs done well in the home. So you can think about it like Angi can help you find the name of the plumber, but ultimately you're not happy as the homeowner until that job is done well. And the pro is not, excited until he's got or she has a job that they're like, I built that kitchen. Right. It's like I was talking to, one of the pros out here in Southern California who does solar. And, he would drive around with his team and they'd be like, we did the solar on that roof. We did the solar on that roof. I mean, there is like a community kind of pride that comes from these projects. So, I think when you think about it, it's like, how do we get to a job done well? And how do we act as that trusted intermediary between these two parties to help facilitate? And that's where that trust comes in.
Yeah. So if there's like a little word cloud forming, I hear trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there have been so many of these iconic brand marketers on the show. So my takeaway from what some of them have said, a brand is a shorthand for what you stand for. A brand is what you would come to expect. If you think about a 007 movie, you don't really have to say much more. You can sort of imagine what you're going to get. You're going to get shaken, not stirred. You're going to get finely dressed people,
right? Maybe
fast cars. You maybe get a little violence,
right?
And a plot that's not difficult to figure out. But like you already know what to expect,
right?
And another analogy that I like is, you can have a product or service, or you can have a brand. A brand, typically, people are willing to wait in line for or pay a premium for.
Right.
Some people have generic brands by design because they want to be found on every corner, or like who makes it,
Right.
or what's behind it doesn't matter. That's why you have like generic medication, or and so, you'll buy that wherever you get it, Costco
Right.
or whatever, and it doesn't matter. But brands do matter, and people go out of their way to find that,
Right.
despite the price, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I guess what you're saying is a lot of the Angie's brand is trust.
And really curating and celebrating the skilled trades.
Yeah.
So a lot of the contractors that are doing all of this great work are small businesses. They're, less than 4 people. And so they don't have the budget to go build out kind of a brand in and of themselves. I mean, it's expensive for them to do that. So, our view is like, let them focus on their craft and let us help celebrate their wins.
Yeah. The thing I know about trust is it usually takes a long time to earn it, but you can break it in just a matter of seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Has there ever been a time where you've struggled with that as a brand? Like you've dealt with trust issues, or what are some of the obstacles that have come in your way?
Yeah. I think no matter who you are or what business you run, kind of things aren't perfect. Not every job ends up being a job done well, or something goes awry. And it comes down to kind of how you handle those situations. So it's preparing yourself to kind of be in a position that you can, kind of explain, feel fair, and kind of like, and apologize for what's gone wrong and fix what's gone wrong.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to admit your mistakes.
Right. I mean, I don't mind. Well, let's bring up someone else that I don't mind throwing under the bus because they will probably never be on this podcast. I think about Yelp.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of Yelp, and I don't mind saying it. I think it's a racket. And I have personal experience with this, so I don't mind saying it. And very quickly lost my trust just because of everything that I saw happening, as a small business owner, trying to be in that space. So, what are some of the things that you've grappled with in order, like mistakes you've made or problems that have come up that we can learn from?
Yeah. I think some of the things that we learned was just like establishing and how transparent you are. For example, like, we learned like it's important for you to be clear, about how we do things. So for example, we don't take anonymous reviews. Like that was something we established early on.
Yeah.
It's like there needs to be a source to this story, and, yep, we're going to lose some complaints, but you know what? It brings more credibility to the ones that are there, and the projects that we're helping people figure out are expensive. So they want to have reliability there.
Say more about that. I think that's a very important psychological advantage.
Mm-hmm.
This podcast, last time I checked, I don't check very often because it hurts my feelings sometimes, but like I think it has 4.9 or 4.8 stars.
Yep.
And at first I was like,
that's good.
Right?
That's good because you don't want to be perfect.
Right. That's why I want to say more about that, because at first I was like, oh man, I really want that 5-star rating. But then as I started thinking about it, it's like too much shine is you start to get this sort of suspect, like, wait a second.
Are they gaming this in some way?
Right. Yeah. That's how I felt about that other company I just mentioned. It's like, it's sort of sus, as they say. So
I think that's exactly right. So I always look for the complaints with a company, and not because I want to just like kind of, I need to avoid them or things like that.
Yeah.
I want to see how they handle themselves when the chips are down.
Right.
Because nothing is guaranteed to be perfect, and you want to know how they handle it.
Right.
So do they come back and fix it? Do they stand behind their work? What is it they're doing? Are they yelling at their customers, or are they like, hey, I appreciate the feedback? I mean, I coach contractors on how to take feedback as well. I mean, I think we all have to learn how to take feedback, and it's the same thing we practice inside our organization because we get feedback, right?
Yeah.
It's like, first, I always tell them, like, they get a complaint. I mean, these conversations used to like scare me, my 22-year-old introverted self, right? Like, kind of contractor calls me up and he's angry and he's yelling at me because he's gotten a bad review, and I'm just like, sorry, I don't know what to say.
Yeah.
So first I'm like, look, go have a cup of coffee.
Meet in person.
No, don't. No, I tell them to go have a cup of coffee and then come back and we'll talk about it. Like,
take a
do
break.
not respond right now.
Gotcha. In the heat of the moment.
Do not respond because it is not going to be effective. You're angry right now. You need to kind of gain a little perspective, and then you need to be able to kind of look into it and kind of like, okay, what in this can I glimmer and learn from? This is an element of truth. And how do I improve the business from that? And then respond, because your mindset and how you respond is going to be very different in that scenario.
Yeah, that's good advice.
And that's because it's actually one of your most important marketing opportunities you're going to make right now. It's how you respond to that review.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I think everyone listening can probably relate to that, buying something on Amazon, wherever they're buying, they're looking at the reviews. And I do this. It's like, I want to look at the worst review and then decide if it's a deal breaker for me or not.
I mean, if you see a trend and it's kind of always the same kind of common things, then you're like, now I see something. But a one-off review that's not great, I think it actually makes me feel better.
Right. Yeah. That's so smart. Such good advice. What else? What else went wrong? Where did you take the misstep?
Let's see.
I mean, you were chief marketing officer. I mean, it seems like an unwilling participant at first, sort of thrust into that role. You were taking all the calls, doing customer service, being the chief marketing officer of a small little upstart.
Yep.
And then it grew into something bigger. How did you, I mean, I would imagine back in the old days, it's word of mouth. It's, you're printing these flyers off of Kinko's, but how did you even decide what market to go to next?
There wasn't a lot of strategy there. We would go to where we knew people.
Yeah, darts on a board or something.
It was like we started in Columbus. We knew someone in Cleveland, so Cleveland was up next. Knew someone in Charlotte. Charlotte was up next after that. I mean, we kind of went in that direction. I mean, that was an area that we could have done better. For us, our biggest expense, we were offline local marketers at the time. There wasn't digital advertising then, and we were local marketers. And, the cost to do local marketing in bigger cities was kind of hard to stomach. And we probably waited too long to go to the bigger cities, quite honestly. It's like there's a reason that people open on the coast. It's because there's lots of people there.
Yeah.
Big cities draw, kind of startups.
Yeah, but it seems like it was kind of a homegrown groundswell kind of thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think it worked well for our business because, the nature of the business, it's all about home improvement. It's about home ownership. And, if you think about kind of the midsection of the country, there's lots of housing stock, kind of suburbia, lots of renovation of houses that, it just made sense.
Yeah.
And, I think it, and it helped us stay, it was helped kind of two things. One, I think it helped the brand. I mean, we kind of, when the marketing team convinced me to be in creative, because the most common question we got was there really an Angie? And I was like, okay, we're not really doing much, so it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's like it kind of matched that kind of Midwestern kind of next door neighbor feel. And then I think one of the things that I've learned kind of over the years is, starting a business in the Midwest, you don't have access to some things, but you also don't get distracted by some things.
Right.
It's like I'm not chasing the next shiny item. I can kind of stay tunnel vision on what we're working on and really kind of solve the problem.
Yeah. I'm curious too, was there if you're literally the face of the company, did you have image consultants, and did you have to go through any of that?
No.
We want you to look taller, Angie, so please wear, high heels or wedges, or, we need you to be this or be that. Were you getting invites to the Met Gala and were you doing all that kind of stuff?
I did get invites to stuff like this. So I guess I was doing a lot of public relations in kind of the early days. So we did have a consultant that helped me just with public speaking.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't very good at it.
And what kind of PR? Was this speaking at events or conferences?
So no, just doing, I was doing a ton of local television. So I was flying around the country and showing up on your morning shows everywhere in the country. So we hired, kind of the consultant company that would actually consult to local television stations and had her come out, and she worked with me and kind of practiced kind of how to speak and how to talk and walk and all those kind of things.
But probably
but as far as kind of image consulting and things like that, I said no.
Yeah.
It was just one of those where I was like, I believe that I needed to be who I was, and we're not going to make me uncomfortable. I remember one point, one of our investors suggested I go by Angela instead of Angie because no one would take someone named Angie seriously.
Fancier,
and I was like, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going to do that. I think you have to be who you're going to be. And I think, that's something that's important for the marketers to realize. I'm like, I'm not going to do that fun little social post that seems that I look incredibly awkward doing just because it's all the rage right now.
Right.
Like, I'm just not going to do that because it's not comfortable. So, you're limited on your creativity.
I think that's a great message, though, because that's, if you were to ask me what I think Angie's brand is, authentic is what comes to my mind. Yeah. I feel like you stayed the course. You're a little more experienced now than you were.
Right. I've done a few more projects.
But basically, it seems like you stayed the course, and that authenticity is what I think of. I mean, even to this day, all these years later, like, it's consistent. It's the same. It's like still trustworthy. You're the same person. And
that's why, like we talk about this, and this is like always a debate in the organization, and has been forever, is just like, it's like, kind of, does Angie age out? It's like, but it's one of those where it's like, for some things as a young person, am I relatable to a millennial or Gen Z, right?
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
To my kids, and it's kind of one of those where it's like there's lots of things I want advice from my peers, but when it comes to your home, I might still call my mom and ask her.
Right. So that's working in your favor.
Exactly. This might actually be my gray hair might actually work in my favor.
Yeah. Walk me and talk me through some of those thought processes, though. Like, because everyone's going to go through that. I mean,
right.
I remember in my 20s, no one listened to me because I didn't have much to say.
Right. Yeah.
Let's face it, I didn't have much life experience. It's only till like in your 30s that starts to kick into your favor. But then, talking to people who are getting to that certain age where they feel like they're not as relevant as before. So walk me through that process of, did you look at other comps? Like, okay, here is so-and-so, and this is what they did. Did you go through that at all?
Yeah. I mean, so, the marketing team will do, kind of, they have over the years done tests and kind of, I'm trying to think of even what the test is, where they'll survey and kind of check. And we are incredibly analytically driven. So, like the stuff either works or it doesn't. And there is no harm. Like, I'm kind of like, if something tests better, by all means.
Yeah.
Go for it.
You can't argue with the number. So what does that look like? How do you do the analytics?
So whether it's creative, they'll just do kind of A/B testing on creative and see which things work better and then decide from there.
Okay. And where are they testing? Are they on
they'll run tests whether they run tests on television to test on digital ads, kind of tests all about.
Let's break that down a little bit. So the marketing mix. No, I'm fascinated because I do see Angie spots on TV once in a while, and like spot markets. We're in LA. I still see them. They tend to run. I think the ones I've seen. I'm just thinking of the ones maybe at night. Later, like after sports and watching Sports Center or something. So how do you think about the marketing mix?
Yeah. So, it's just evolved over time. So if you take it back to the early days, it was all offline, local. Then it went to, kind of television national, NPR national, as well as some digital. And now, now it's more, kind of much more digital, but still has a balance of brand marketing in there. I think brand marketing creates that halo effect that kind of makes all your marketing channels work harder.
Yeah. So you say you had a title change. So you were the CMO. Now you are
Chief Customer Officer.
Okay. And so why the change?
Yeah. In many ways it was, to try to be able to do the things I actually probably had been spending more of my time doing kind of in the latter years, was spending time kind of talking to customers and really understanding and, in some ways consulting inside the business. Right. And the stuff I enjoy a ton. I love talking to pros about their stories and, kind of how things are working for them and things like that. And same with homeowners. I've had a luxury, kind of being recognizable that I've had so many conversations over the years with people that have been kind of touched by the business in some way. And it's been neat to see. And, I try to bottle that up and try to find ways to share that with our team too. So for example, I'll interview pros and share them on a little video internally for the team to watch, because I was like, you need to hear these stories. I have the luxury of hearing these stories, but you all need to hear these too, because this is what keeps me going. And I think it'll help you kind of understand better the customer and what you're working on.
Yeah. It makes sense because you're the literal face name behind the brand. And maybe you didn't feel qualified in the very beginning to be the CMO.
Right.
But that, you just did what was asked of you.
Right.
And you executed as usual. That's your track record. Got it done. And now, as the visionary or as the namesake, you're also doing all the most important work, which is in the trenches, either B2B or B2C, right?
Yep.
What sort of spend, for other marketers who are thinking about how to allocate? So, there's been this shift, at least it seems to me. We've been in this performance marketing genre since the mid 2000s, basically when Facebook and Google and now YouTube, which is Google, really kicked in. But it seems to be swinging back to brand marketing. Any good marketer, if they've got the budget, they ought to be doing both.
Right.
But like, how are you thinking about spend now? Is it like, let's cover the earth? Or if it's like, hey, now is the time for TV because it's an arbitrage opportunity. Like for the other, CMOs or marketers in the room, how do you look at that?
I mean, I think you have to be like, we view ourselves as needing to be everywhere people are looking for home improvement. So if I'm thinking about, searching for a roofer to redo my roof, we want to be there. So whether that's SEO or whether that's, SEM, I think that's kind of table stakes. We want to be in those areas. And then I think it's kind of like, how do you create the magic about the brand? Because I think that's where you get the stickiness. So that becomes the brand marketing experience. And whether you're doing that through, like television had been a kind of our mainstay forever. And I think for a lot of big brand companies, that has been their stay, but now social's becoming more of a thing. And like, how do you blend those two together to kind of create a unique message for your business? So it's not just that I can functionally help you with your problem, but like, how do we create that emotional tie to the business as well? But
how have you done it?
And I think, for us, I mean, I think part of it was, kind of we used, kind of in the early days, I mean, kind of, I think having me in it kind of created kind of a personal connection.
Yeah, you're the anchor.
Yeah, I mean, we used a lot of testimonial type things as well. And we continue to do that. I mean, even, even some of our current television ads, there's actual pros that are in those commercials. I mean, our view is like, how do we celebrate the customers and share the experience? But I have to say, I'm kind of old school. I am a big direct response marketer. So I'm always thinking about kind of the hard acting. I mean, there's always that kind of like, I could create this great campaign that might be fantastic. And maybe it's the non-creative and the mathematical person in me that says, that's hard.
Yeah.
Let's get kind of really hard performing, kind of even in brand marketing, kind of thinking about from a direct response standpoint too.
Okay. I'm going to dig a little deeper on that. So like, ROAS is an important acronym. What kind of ROAS are you looking at when you're looking at like? I mean,
I treat, like in my world, I've always treated kind of brand marketing the same way as everything else. Like when I want my return, I want my return. Like it's,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of like the brand stuff's got to deliver just as much, and like, don't worry, we'll run all kind of analytics to kind of understand how that brand impacts other channels, et cetera. But
yeah. Are you tracking it like with phone numbers or like with a certain website? Like, are you tracking the TV versus let's say if you're on Instagram or something?
Yeah, we'll check kind of like what's, kind of traffic look like and activity and all that kind of stuff that comes through those.
How have you been affected or not affected by competition? I think one of the challenges is, when you're the player, might as well be called the list. There's not a lot of other lists, but people will enter the market.
Right.
And then you start talking about features and benefits, or you talk about testimonials, and then other people start doing the same kind of thing. You become sort of lost in that, herd. Yeah.
I think you constantly have to think about how you differentiate. I mean, like, I've been at this for nearly 30 years, and I think that you're constantly kind of evolving that messaging and making sure that you're thinking about where you, differentiate. Now that's, kind of, that's why we're really focused right now and kind of around that jobs done well, because that's actually like, we have enough kind of experience and understanding and kind of know kind of what goes into what makes a great pro that we can kind of help to kind of screen things out and make sure we're getting the best ones in front of you to choose for your job. And you know,
the vetting
and it's not just like, hey, we can not only help you find someone to clean your house, we can also find someone to remodel your kitchen, you know, and that's a much bigger project and much more complicated project. And that's kind of like, so we spend our time focusing on those big projects because we know that's where we know we can always deliver, and like, hey, we can deliver that. We can deliver the handyman jobs too.
Yeah. I mean, I think that can be called like an unfair advantage. Like you established, you're sort of a legacy brand. You have this reputation already built. That's sort of your unfair advantage to have that clout, that trust factor.
Yeah. But you have to continue to deliver on that every day.
Right.
So it's not like you can't just rest on the past, right? It's like, you know, what jobs have we done great today? Because that's how we're going to be evaluated.
Right. What have you done for me lately? Yeah. And like I said, trust is easily broken if you mess up. Who's been encroaching into your space then?
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of run the gamut. There's been kind of waves of kind of folks. I mean, you know, probably the biggest one, you know, kind of out there kind of in the day was Home Advisor, which, you know, we ended up being they were owned by IAC. IAC then acquired us, merged us together. So now that we've kind of taken we were both kind of 1 and 2, and now we're 1. And, you know, Yelp has a home improvement kind of section up for them as well. I mean, and then there's smaller ones that are kind of typically more on the smaller scale. We had bought a little company called Handy back in the day, that was focused on house cleaning, for example. So we're always watching to see kind of what the interesting new entrant is kind of tackling and doing, but also staying focused on making sure that we've got the matches and we've got the quality pros to be able to deliver.
How about like a TaskRabbit, you know?
Yeah, I mean, so there's kind of a group that kind of fall into those smaller tasks, right? And, you know, there's always that risk that they kind of win kind of in that kind of first test of a job, you know, but, you know, our goal is to kind of serve the entire market. So it's like, hey, you know, like we've got great handymen on at Angi, but we also have roofers and we also have window replacements, and we've got a fantastic landscaping company so that we can grow with you in your house. I mean, that's the thing about a house. It's complicated. There's hundreds of different tasks that are out there. And, you know, and while I love a great handyman, they can't do them all.
Right. And so what's the transition been like from small little company to now, you know, what even category are you? Are you in like market leader? How do you guys look at yourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, as we've evolved over time, it's just, you know, we've become the brand leader in this area.
How big is the brand? I mean, what's the ish, you know, what's the market size? What's the revenue size?
Yeah, so it's
what
$1
league
billion in revenue. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, B. And so, you know, it's about, you know, we help millions of homeowners every year kind of tackle their home improvement problems. So not problems, you know, sometimes they're problems, like, you know, when my daughter backed the car into the not quite open garage door.
Sure.
Those are problems. I want that one to go away, to the, you know, kind of, gosh, I'm going to put in a new pool. That's super fun. I love that project. You know, that we can kind of help them across all of those lines. Now I've lost track of what your question was there, though.
I peppered you with questions. Sorry about that. I wanted to get an idea of the scale, and, you know, looking at you and listening to you, it doesn't seem like, you know, it's everything and nothing has changed about the business, but somehow you've been able to weather storms and, you know, gain all this experience, and, you know, you're $1 billion company with a B now. What has that transition been like as like a C-level executive? Like, is there pressure, you know, from the board, you know, for you to do certain things or act a certain way, or, you know, maintain, like, walk us through like other people who are at that C level?
Yeah, I think you constantly have to be kind of thinking about what areas you need to develop. I'm constantly learning. I think that's something that's really important. So I think sometimes people are like learning because they're going from, you know, kind of new career opportunities, right? Like, I've had to kind of self-learn inside of one career. I'm like, I love what we do, but we all have times when we're kind of like, it's getting kind of stale. I feel like I'm kind of on repeat. And you kind of have to think about what things you're going to do and how you're going to think about tackling things, you know? So that's something that you go through periodically, and whether, kind of you're, learning a new skill, whether you're, reading some new thing or rolling out something new. I mean, I took something that I had developed. I had office hours back in the day when our company got too big that I had to look at name tags to remember people's names. I was really frustrated. And so I introduced office hours where anyone in the company could come sign up. We could talk about anything they want to talk about. I did it on Fridays for 1 hour, 15-minute, 4 15-minute slots I dedicate a week. I often found that the offer was more valuable than the time. And I always made sure that, I gave something in every one of those meetings, whether it was introduction, etc. And I learned more coming out of those meetings than I think the team did. It was just something, it was a chance for me to connect and kind of get perspective. And then I took that and I said, hey, let's go try that. Years later, I was like, we should be talking to the pros more. We need more insights from the pros. So I was like, let's invite pros to do this same thing.
Yeah.
And so now I dedicate several hours a week where pros can sign up and talk about anything they want to talk about. And it's fun, and it's a great way to kind of capture kind of live feedback. It's qualitative. I mean, does not replace our market research and all those kind of things, but it's a microcosm of kind of how pros feel and what they're thinking about and how they're, kind of working in the industry and what, motivates them. Yeah. And it's, great storytelling to bring back to the team.
Yeah, I can see. I mean, you have basically boots on the ground, and you're doing the...
Yeah. And again, I still believe that like the offer is probably worth more than necessarily kind of the conversations in and of themselves. So I'm like, keep the offer out there. Door's always open.
Yeah. How big's your team?
Oh, gosh. We have maybe 3,000 people or so, I think.
Yeah. And you're based in?
I'm based in Indianapolis, but we have people all over the country.
Yeah. And how many like on your core marketing team? And are they based in Indy?
So the marketing team is across the country as well. Okay. So our CMO's in New York, and there's a handful of folks there, and then they're kind of scattered. I think they're, one of our gals in socials in Philadelphia. I mean, we're kind of scattered. We're just like, we go for kind of where we find talent. I think that was, kind of the result of the pandemic, right? When kind of folks started looking broader for talent, and, we've kind of taken advantage of being able to continue that.
Yeah. How do you get inspired? Like, do you go non-endemic? Do you go outside for influence or for, to like sharpen the blade, so to speak? What are some of these activities that you do? Do you have rituals or routines?
Yeah. I think a few things. I would say, kind of this kind of customer interaction is one thing that I'll do. I like to spend time, I do a lot of projects around my house myself, like not myself, but I hire a lot of projects. So I'm like, I feel like I also try to walk the walk a lot. So there's lots of projects. I think sometimes people are like, Angie, quit giving us feedback. You give us lots of feedback.
Yeah.
Which is okay.
Yeah. I know we just redid the kitchen like last month, but let's do it again.
But it's great fodder. I mean, we did just do our kitchen 2 years ago, and my husband was like, no way. Like, you're pulling the string, and then you're going to want the bathroom, and then you're going to want this, and you're going to want this. And like, he's like, it's a total waste of money. I did the kitchen. Guess who loves the kitchen more than I do?
Sure, yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
It's just like, if we move, we have to find a kitchen that looks like this kitchen. I'm like, I've started cooking now.
I was going to say, who does the cooking? Does
so now
he cook?
I'm cooking.
Oh, you're cooking.
Yeah, I'm like, I took up cooking and like all kinds of stuff. So I was just like, it's amazing how a project can kind of change kind of who you are and what you do sometimes.
Yeah. How about travel? You travel, and like, where have you been and what's inspired you, and where? Like,
yeah, I mean, I traveled a ton in the early days of kind of starting the business. I was like on a plane every other week going to various cities, kind
all
of
over the U.S.
Newborn in tow.
Okay.
Sometimes my mom would come with me to watch the baby while I did things. It's like I was on the road a ton, and I became like the queen of day trips. I was always on the 6 a.m. flight, and I'd always hurry home because I didn't want to be away overnight when the kids were little, especially. They're kind of teenagers and 20s now. So
Yeah.
they probably are like, go ahead.
How about your husband? Does he stay home or does he work?
So my husband was a lawyer, and when our oldest was 2, he decided to be a stay-at-home dad.
Yeah.
And, I think it's fantastic. It's like, I think it wasn't the norm. It probably still isn't the norm today, but he was hopeful that our kids would grow up with, kind of his personality. And let me tell you, they're tough. They can handle their own. I'm like, I love it,
Yeah. Well, it's always a team effort. Right?
Yeah.
But,
yeah. But he always told me, he was like, doesn't matter. You're like, when a kid, kind of accomplishes something, they're, the first person they're always going to thank is mom. Because I personally was like challenged by that. I was like, well, what does this mean? What does this mean for me as the mom? And it's like, it's right. It was just more. It was just better.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any rituals, routines, like, walk us through like a typical day?
Yeah. I mean, I try. I just have, I set kind of small rituals. So, for example, I think we kind of live in a world where we're all too connected all the time. Like there's this always on, right? So I try to, and I actually think that in some ways kind of work from home is not the greatest thing. I'm going to go out on a limb here.
Yeah, it's okay.
Because you don't ever have a shut off.
Yeah.
Especially, I think, for women, like you're always multitasking.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, and so you're just now multitasking until you go to sleep at night. So, trying to create some boundaries in kind of time and space. So when when I was going to we were going to the office every day, we had a family rule. If I was not traveling, I was home at 6:00 for dinner every night. Doesn't mean dinner was some elaborate, well-cooked thing. We lived on a lot of crock pot food or carry out, but dinner was together and it was at 6:00. I don't keep my phone in my bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
Cause I tell young people, I was like, do you know they make something and it costs about $10? It's called an alarm clock.
Yeah.
And it's just a clock and it just buzzes when you need to get up. Your phone doesn't have to be your alarm clock.
Yeah.
Because you can hear it. Like even if it's on silent or vibrate, like you can hear it. And the last thing you want to do is roll over when you're kind of half awake in the middle of the night and pick your phone up.
Yeah. Or if you're really addicted, you have this phantom vibration on your leg.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever felt that. You had the
It's
phone
like,
in your pocket.
You just gotta say no.
Yeah.
You gotta put it away.
Yeah.
So, then I try to not pick it up until I've like had breakfast and showered in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to, encourage team members. I was like, look, like sometimes I might email or I might Slack at an odd time. Do not respond to me just because I did it then. It's because that was when I thought of it. Like, if I actually need you, I'll find you.
Yeah, you put the little fire emojis behind it.
You do not need to. No. I'm like, I'm old fashioned. I will just call you on the phone. Do not sit there and like look at your email and Slack all evening wondering if I need something. I don't need anything.
Yeah.
I don't. We are not running the ER.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I have this theory that, the pendulum will swing, right? Like, so we've been in this underwater with everything digital and been so on. And there's a lot of advantages that we're all connected and we can Slack each other and we can text and all that. It's great. At the same time, I feel like when the pendulum swings back, there's people that want a non-digital, super analog or off the grid experience. And so as I think, I'm this idea guy, I like to think about new businesses and new ideas. I can imagine even now it's happening, like, go on this excursion or, they even have those little safes where you can lock your phone away and you set the time and you can't unlock it until it comes out of hibernation or whatever.
Yeah, I don't think people take enough vacations. I'm like, I remember vacation when you were literally gone. So unless you told your colleagues where you were going and where you were staying so they could call the hotel, they weren't reaching you.
Yeah. Have you heard about...
like vacation is not the same anymore.
No. Well, have you heard of this quiet vacationing? You've heard of quiet quitting?
Oh, yeah, exactly. You're just like, I'm just not going to tell you I'm on vacation. But it's true. They're just like, they're off doing things.
Yeah, because they don't want to, be tracked down. Yeah. Or they don't want other people to know that they're taking a vacation. Yeah. I think it's terrible.
It's just terrible.
Yeah.
Like if there's like so many games. Yeah. It's just terrible.
But at the same time, it trickles down from the top. Let's be honest, right? Yep. Like, so it's a culture of, treating the workplace like we're in the ER and everything is an emergency.
Yeah. But it's healthier for the business when you get away. Everybody. Like, I'm like, I will sit with my teams. Like, it's like, I think you see this with a lot of kind of overachievers. They're just like, I'm like, when is your 1 week vacation going to show up on my calendar because it needs to happen.
Right.
Like that will be like, I could use that as like this is like the most important thing we're going to talk about in our one-on-one today.
Right.
And I don't care if you just sit at home.
Yeah.
But you're going to not be here and somebody else is going to work on your job.
Yeah.
I'm like, I understood the value of that, like when I was having kids and I had maternity leave. It was just like there was something magical about having a few weeks off where you're just completely disconnected and you get kind of different perspective on things. It's like sometimes I think we're kind of running and trying to stay hands-on everything all the time that we forget. So take your vacation.
Yeah.
No one's going to tell you to take your vacation, but take your vacation. Everybody needs a vacation. So this summer, it looks like more people are vacationing. Be one of them.
I love that. I think that may be another advantage of yours. You just happen to be a parent, and when you have children, and
that forces it.
It just life gets real.
Yep.
Right. Like it's sort of like my kid is sick, or my kid has soccer practice or piano lessons, or, I just need to be home at 6:00.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think and finding, I remember I was hiring someone on the team years ago, and she had been a stay-at-home mom. Her daughter was in kindergarten at this point. She wanted to get back into the working world. And she was like, Angie, would it be okay if, I don't know, once a month, once every couple of weeks, if I go and read in my daughter's kindergarten class? And I was like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Like, because I knew like you spend so much time at work. And if there isn't this kind of flexibility and back and forth where, that is fine. Because I know at some point I am going to call you and we're going to need you. You're going to pick that call up because we actually respect each other and kind of all that we bring to the table, not just what happens on the work.
Yeah. I love that idea of emotional deposits and withdrawals.
Right.
You've got to have a balance of both.
Yeah.
If you overdraw the account with all these requests, you're going to burn people out.
Exactly.
So maybe in conclusion here, how do you pick the right people? Like, are you looking for a certain type of person? Are you looking for introverts these days? Math whizzes or Midwesterners, or like, how do you pick your team?
I think it's something that in general we don't spend enough time on. We spend way too little time hiring and way too much time firing. Takes us too long to fire. Like, if you got a bad apple, you just need to get them out. Just go ahead and make the call. You're not going to change your mind. You're not going to change it. You're just bad attitudes out.
Yeah.
So I think you have to think about what works. I mean, like when I was building up my marketing department, for example, back in the day, I'm like, I didn't have too many marketing experts.
Interesting.
I actually hired just a lot of smart young people that I trained to do things.
So it's a repeat of what happened to you.
Exactly. I'm like, maybe we follow the path for which we've been led.
Yeah.
I look for kind of, folks that were talented, and I was like, you know what? I can teach them this stuff. They're gonna
Harvard MBAs.
There weren't a lot of Harvard MBAs in the early days.
Yeah.
No. So I think you just need to be honest with yourself as to kind of what you're good at and kind of make sure you're complimenting that team. Kind of people that'll stretch you and cause you to think outside the box. Like I never would have thought, gosh, we should do this with a marketing campaign or whatever. I'm like, I needed creative people. I'm not creative. But if I hired a bunch of math people, I had a lot of them, we never would have evolved, kind of the brand as we ended up doing.
Let's go back on that for a second. Just maybe think of something. So you're analytical. You want to do, creative stuff, but you're relying on the creatives to make it.
Yeah.
But then you're holding them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Even brand spots, which is scary to me because
I did everything. I measure everything in numbers. I remember my public relations team. I was like, oh no, like each hit, we can value that. Like, let's just value that. And like, they're like, but it's a brand. I was like, well, no, it's got to be hardworking brand.
Yeah, that would be scary for me because that's in my mind. That's not what a brand does. It's back to that shorthand.
I want branded more.
Yeah, well, I mean. You can try to have it, but that's what performance is for, right?
Right.
So have you tried anything super ambitious? Like, how have you tried to expand and build the brand from what it was until now? Like, the Super Bowl spots or the what risks have you take creatively?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, we continue to kind of rotate and kind of try to figure out what the right creative mix is for it. I mean, we've never done a Super Bowl ad. I'm like,
Would you do it?
Like, not my decision now, but like, I would not do it.
Why not?
I was just like, too much money.
But okay, let me push back a little bit. So how
it's back to it's like this. I'm like, I get it. It's high risk, high reward, right?
Hold on, listen, hear me out. So a Super Bowl spot is what, $5 to $7 million these days, but it reaches.
This is a lot of money. Do you understand that?
But in exchange, you get so many eyeballs focused, and you have, you sort of know what you're getting, right? You're getting that.
You're just talking to the wrong gal. I am just too pragmatic.
I think, and a lot of people would probably agree with me that that's a bargain still. If you're getting 30 plus million,
I know,
views, impressions,
right.
People paying attention, and people love the commercials. They marketers like me. We analyze that.
Oh, we have to go figure all that out. You got to get you have to just the right spot. I mean, I like watching the Super Bowl for the game, but I love watching it for the commercials too.
Right. This is what I'm saying.
I admire the creativity that goes into that.
Mm-hmm. What would be risky for Angie to do, like the brand? Like, would you do comedy or would you do parody or would you, you spin this traditional like testimonials? Like, what would be just a little bit out of your comfort zone that you would consider?
I don't know. That's a great question.
I think about brands like Liquid Death. Are they on your radar at all?
Yep.
So when we're talking about testimonials or like negative reviews, there's a brand, and in their defense, to their credit, they're a bunch of agency people that are now running a brand, which is super fun because they know how to be outlandish and push boundaries. Yeah. But one of the negative comments, whether it's real or made up, is I'd rather lick the sweat off of someone's back than drink this terrible Liquid Death. And they turned that into a TV spot where they actually had this person. And
when I meet people that do things like that, I'm just like, that is so fascinating. Like, this is probably one of the reasons why I don't run the marketing department now. Is
so
it's kind of like, it is fun, but I'm just like, oh, wow, that's interesting. Like, did you get the website in there 3 times? And if I listen to the spot.
Right. So if that's a 10 out of 10 in terms of risk, and maybe Angie is maybe at the 3 right now, conservative, what's just a little bit out of your comfort zone that you would consider or you think still on brand that you'd like to try?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's like we have to. I don't know that I have something in particular, but I think, as we evolve and, it's like I think a lot of the stuff that, kind of we'll test and try on social and do things like that as we're kind of going after this, as this younger audience ages into home ownership. I think it'll take us spaces that we haven't, that we clearly haven't been before. I mean, and I think it's important for the brand to stay relevant.
Mm-hmm. How are you thinking about AI and all the implications of the new technology that's coming out? Are you thinking about it? Are you
absolutely
intimidated by it? Or
I mean, I think it's fascinating. I think it's fascinating to think about kind of how that will change how we do everything. I mean, I think last year we on National Signing Day for people going into the skilled trades. There's a day in May that's National Signing Day. We actually wrote a piece about kind of why the trades is a great opportunity and ran it in the New York Times, and we used AI to write it.
Okay.
So it's like one of those examples, like, look at this, like, look what can be done. Like, it's fascinating to experiment. And I think it's super important to always be thinking about new technology and how it can impact what's going on in your business, how you can kind of evolve and kind of keep up to speed. I mean, I think, the pros are super excited. We recently did a survey and they were like, they feel pretty confident that AI is not taking over their jobs just yet, but and in fact, it could probably help, but I think, so for all of you that are being displaced by AI, think about going into the trades. Lots of people kind of use it as a mid-career shift.
Yeah, I kind of want to bring the conversation back full circle because you started our conversation by saying that Angie's is a tech company. Mm-hmm. And And so as technology is advancing like right under our noses, especially with search and all of that, I would just wonder if you're experimenting with it or leveraging it already, or thinking about like what's the next iteration or phase, how it affects the ability to basically find resources, which is what you're doing. You're a bridge that puts hands together.
Correct.
Trusted hands. You're vetting. It's a vetting
And
process.
so how do we position ourselves and make sure that we stay the trusted resource in that process?
Well, you stay a tech company. I mean, are you thinking about that, or will it sort of go back, this tried and true person to person, pressing the flesh?
I think there's elements of both, right? So if you think about where we are in the home improvement kind of spectrum, it's like while we're bringing tech to the home improvement industry, there's still a lot of the industry that needs to come to tech. As far as most homeowners still do kind of talk to their neighbors to find the name of a plumber.
Those contractors are not.
And not all of these are they're not all kind of digital savvy marketers.
None of them are.
Yeah, I mean, they're still like, my truck gets a lot of my business, right? Or just a job done well gets gets me a lot of my business. So I think there is kind of opportunity to still be advancing tech, because there's lots of things that can be done. That can schedule, and we can pay, and we can find everything and click, and not have to actually talk on the phone to someone. But then also how do you think about kind of bringing that personal touch into tech? And I think, AI could bring some of that, as long as it has authenticity. It has to have authenticity, I think.
Yeah. So if you had the opportunity to jump into the driver's seat, into the helm of another brand or industry, what would be like a fantasy wish? What would you try? Even just for like a couple of months.
Oh, I don't know. Let me think. I would probably, quite honestly, I would probably try a small business of some kind. I think there's just something about kind of being just you.
Yeah.
I just think there's just something about kind of having your own thing that you're kind of you do everything. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking to pros about the decision. Do I stay a sole proprietor? Do I grow and have a couple of teams underneath me? And it's it's maybe I go back old school.
Yeah. Would it be service-based or product-based?
Probably be service-based of some kind, I would guess.
What would the service be?
Oh, I don't know. It's like the things my husband asked me, at one point, one of my daughters, who's going to be a teacher, wanted to run a landscaping business. I'm just I don't know. There's lots of things that could be started. I don't know. I just enjoy, I have a farm, got an apple orchard that I'm trying to grow. I'm concerned this year. The apples aren't coming on this year, so I don't know. I have to research this better.
I'll let you too.
So I have an aunt and uncle that run a pumpkin. They have a pumpkin business. I'm going to plant my pumpkins this week.
Okay.
So I don't know. Maybe something with the farm.
That's fun. I probably eat 2 apples a day.
Yeah.
I have usually one in the breakfast.
Yeah.
One as a snack. I love it. What kind of apples are you growing?
So I've got Granny Smith. I have Red Delicious. I have Honey Crisp. I have a couple of peach trees. Mm-hmm. But I'm kind of new in their tenure, so we're only 3 years in, I think. So most of them are fed to the horses.
Okay.
I'm still working on kind of perfecting the apples.
Are you familiar with how the grafting and creating a new seedling or all that works? I'm just learning a little bit about that.
Just learning. I'm my research was okay, what trees? And so I would to grab apple trees because I think they're important for the whole pollination of the trees. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm a city girl that's trying to figure out how to make an apple orchard.
I mean, we were just sitting back, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. Tracking my roots, where I came from and where I'm going. But like I say, man,